Hello, ladies and gentlemen, you lovely, lovely people. You have the pleasure of having myself, Michael Burhan, today on Shoot the Breeze, hashtag. It's okay if it's in a three-way, of course. But today it's just my good self here, of course, and also my co-host. So, would you like to introduce yourself, of course?
Yeah, I'm David Campbell. You should know this already.
I know this. I just want, I love the sound of your voice. This is the reason why.
Thank you.
And also, I have two special guests. Of course, we have David John Jeffrey. He's on the show today discussing his movie God Taken. David, who's this?
Susanna Rodriguez, she's my co-director, and she's also a star in the film.
Oh, lovely.
Hi.
So, David, you were on the show before, of course, when you were speaking to Marcus Aker, who couldn't be here today. He's decided to pass on the hosting duties to myself, of course. And you were discussing about this movie. Apparently, you had a deal, there was an impending deal with Warner Brothers.
A while ago, I was offered a piece of money from Warner Brothers for the rights to the actual film, as in the script.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. But due to the nature of the actual acquisition, I turned it down because it didn't fit in with what I was looking for. And since then, we started making the film ourselves.
So how's things changed for you? Because before you turned this into a book, and basically turned into a kind of a YouTube series.
Let's get the sequence right.
Of course.
You wrote the book first.
Right. So
Yes.
yes. So I wrote the book when I was 16.
Yes.
It got published when I was 30. Does take that long. And then I got approached by Warner Brothers, and then I got offered the opportunity to make the film myself with a possible contract for distribution.
Okay, before we go any further, because it's a nice history about the book as well. It took from the time you were 30 to get it published.
Yes.
However, how could it have come to Warner Brothers' attention?
Oh
once it
yes,
was
sorry.
published?
It got to #2 in the Kindle charts
Wow.
for religious science fiction.
Yeah, so that actually proves something, because Warner Brothers, like most studios, they tend to buy up all these Kindle books that are basically going out, especially the ones that chart high. So you went on that, and now you're basically making the film yourself with little to no filmmaking experience, of course.
Well, obviously at the beginning I didn't have any. I was a DJ and a photographer, so I understood a little bit about sound, I understood about visuals, but yeah, it's been a learning curve.
So tell us a little bit about the learning curve, because I know myself being an actor / filmmaker who's done the 48-hour film festivals, of course. Marcus has like a ton of stories about the stuff we've been through. How did you manage to kind of go through like the whole filmmaking process, and what are the current issues that you're facing?
Well, tell us about the 48-hour films, because I know this came up in the last time you were here, but you didn't go into very much detail.
No,
so we got a little bit more time this time around. So
Fantastic.
please tell us. Yeah.
Okay, so well, first of all, I was running on my own. I managed to get a cinematographer who wasn't as good as I thought he was, because when I met Susanna, who has a master's degree in filmmaking and drama, she showed me things that were missing in my film production, which I didn't realize because I didn't have the experience. She also recommended I have a go at these 48-hour film festivals. And that was the big learning curve, I suppose. Yeah, I started off with the 2014 Sci-Fi London 48-hour film challenge.
Yes.
And that was great fun, playing around with some of the camera techniques I learned when I was younger. Yeah, so you can watch that. It's called Outline. And then, yeah, we just carried on doing one every year. We tried the 24-hour Texas Film Challenge. That was interesting, because in Texas, it started at 2 in the morning and finished at 2 in the morning the next day. We did the Comic-Con in 2014, I think. Sorry, I think we started filmmaking, doing the film festivals in 2012, and then the Comic-Con in 2014.
So what did you do at the Comic-Con? Was it just basically PR and stuff for the film?
We did a 48-hour Comic-Con film challenge.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And it was origins of
I think the theme was generally about superheroes, and you were supposed to write a story around that subject matter. And but like with any 48-hour film competition, you get given like a title and a prop you have to use and etc.
How did that go? You must have had a lot of tights in that one.
Oh, that yeah, cool.
No, that's okay. And Susanna actually directed that one, so that's why she's passionate about that particular one.
Yeah.
We didn't have tights per se. We made it very fantasy.
That was actually quite fun because it was an almost all-female cast. I think there was only 2 men. That was not by design; it was by accident, by the way.
All for it.
Fantastic. We actually had a really good cinematographer who was an artist as well. So he was able to bring in this superhero, how do you say it, sensibility to the shots. And so I think he actually helped me a lot with the shots that were chosen for the film. And David brought in a lot of his experience as well, because David is really good with creating special effects on a minimal budget. So he was able to create this special effect where the superheroes appear out of nowhere, and things like that. So that's one of the movies that I think we're most proud of. Actually, it's really good.
So speaking of the whole science fiction idea behind GodTech, because I can see that you've utilized a lot of what you've done at these film festivals to actually make this movie. From the trailer, from what I've seen so far, it seems very 80s science fiction based in the sense, which is it's a compliment more than anything else. So I can see what you're trying to kind of accomplish with this. But what do you feel are the biggest hurdles with this? Because having a film such as this, and on the budget, you probably have a very, very minuscule budget right now. What do you feel like the toughest kind of issues that you're dealing with, especially from a technical standpoint?
Well, to be honest with you, I wrote GodTech in such a way that you could film it without any special effects at all. It was very much a drama more than an actual special effecty kind of future film. Obviously, makeup's really important. Getting the right prosthetics and everything that makes a massive difference, especially when we've got the theme is about microchipping in the hand and in the forehead. So we want a really good looking forehead. I've seen some Christian movies in my time.
It's a genre that's very broad in its own spectrum, because you've had movies that have been very low budget per se, to movies that have had great kind of studio backing, but have been done on kind of a minuscule budget in their own right. And I think the biggest thing with Christian movies at the moment, with religious movies as a whole, is the storytelling aspect. Because there's only a few stories that you can tell. There's not really anything kind of new that comes out with it, apart from films such as God Is Not Dead, that tried to tell something new with the whole belief system. But in terms of what you're trying to do and how you're trying to kind of bring this whole thing to life, it's rather interesting to see the mishmash between sci-fi and like the Christian ethos in this well, and trying to bring a story out from all of that. So,
and also not making it cheesy.
Yes.
If I may, actually, that's one of the things I was going to say, because I think because we've been producing it for so long, and we've had 2 offers for funding that haven't come through, so it's a little bit like a waiting game. We've actually got most of the cast in place. We've got most of the crew. We've got the script. Everything is on board. Like if we had the funding, we'd be able to film it straight away. But it's like you say, it's we're trying. I understand what David is saying, like it's a drama, but I would say it is like sci-fi drama, but obviously because we're working with, as you say, with a minuscule budget, we're trying to do it in a way that you don't require a lot of special effects so that we can tell the story. But at the same time, like you said, we don't want to make it too cheesy either. We want to make it interesting, because even though it does have the Christian element to it, we also want it to be a movie that secular audiences can watch and still enjoy, whether they believe in God or not.
So in terms of like the funding options, have you guys actually looked at social media funding, stuff like GoFundMe?
We've been through, I have been through so many funding options in the last 7 years I've worked on this script and this project. I've had Kickstart, I've done all the crowdfunding side of way things, doing things that it doesn't bring in enough to make it worthwhile.
So what's the estimated budget? If you say, like, for instance, hand on the forehead, I'm a big studio exec right now, sitting there telling you, I've got my checkbook out.
Yeah.
What is the budget you need to make this?
If we were to make it the way I would like to see a decent film made, we have a budget in place.
I would say at least 800,000.
Yeah, you're just being really nice and really low
that's
now.
our ideal
Because
budget.
what we're
If we
thinking,
had the, the chance.
£800,000 would give us enough to make the film watchable and still get the point across. We've been told that funders tend to not go that low. So then we had to relook at everything and think, well, if we brought in loads of special effects, how high can we go? And I think we hit it around the 1.9 million mark when we decided we could have absolutely everything we wanted in the world.
Okay, so approximately 2 million.
2 million.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be the dream.
And I'm not going to ask you to tell me how much actually you're away. Just percentage-wise, what percentage are you missing at the moment from that 2 million?
Okay, we were talking about 800,000 2 minutes ago.
Right. Let's go with that. What's the percentage? I mean, how much do you need to get to?
Well, it's been funded by myself. So far, I've invested myself about 15% of that.
Right. Okay.
Wow.
Of my own money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's got us to the stage where we're ready to start filming. And then it's just literally money rolling in as it goes along.
Okay. Just to remind you, you're listening to Shoot the Breeze on Resonance 104.4 FM. You can contact us at STB_Resonance FM on Twitter, Shoot the Breeze Show on Instagram, and hashtag It's All About Three-Way.
Yes, it is.
So,
but it's a kind of about the twosome at the moment because of myself and Dave.
Yeah. And we've actually done things a little bit wrong, a different way this time, because we've gone straight into the spotlight and no theme tune this time. And we'll do the news segment a little bit later because Michael's got plenty of news to catch us up on.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do.
Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, so basically, it sounds to me that the one thing that you guys are missing, which is the core of this, would be a producer. Because for you guys, you're looking at the funding stages of it. And the great thing, and as someone I've been doing this for about like 15 years, working on the independents and also doing big like features and stuff like that. And you need someone to kind of deal with the budget aspect of this because it sounds to me you're hugely creative, both of you. And which is great, it's a great thing. But a short of a lottery wing, you kind of at this stage where you need someone to kind of handle the finance aspect of it to get this ball rolling and get the film done.
Let me quickly ask, Michael, what ideas have you got for raising finance? I mean, just as a general thing.
I would say hire a producer.
Right, okay, no, carry on.
But this is coming from someone who's made mistakes. I've worked on like small indie low budget stuff as well. And I have a film company that specializes in this sort of thing. And when hiring a producer is like the biggest thing you can do, having someone who understands the figures, who can help you realize your vision, and who can keep things under control. You've got great filmmakers, guys like Kevin Smith, for instance, major creative person, has actually sat down and said, without the guy basically who works as a producer, he would basically be lost because he could go to a pitch room and say, I can make a movie for 250 grand, then go to his producer and his producer's sitting there like pulling his hair out, trying to keep the budgets working and making sure that everything works towards the standard that he wants. And I can see how ambitious this is, and that's the one thing. And as someone who's not very religious himself, I can see the passion that resides in this project. And it's a great thing. And especially seeing what you're trying to go for, because the trailer looks fantastic in places. There's certain things, if I was putting my editor hat on, there are certain things I look at it and go, I would get rid of this, and try and make it more cinematic. But you can tell it has some semblance of a project that is very that can be very put together, especially between the two of yourselves. And you are very right. I was listening to the past show, and you were saying about how he needs people behind him. Like you need a DOP, you need technical people, a director of photography. For those who don't understand technical terms. So you need people to make it look really nice and shiny. You need a sound engineer who's going to make it because you said you have a background as a DJ.
Mhm.
But
I know it's not a sound engineer.
We actually
pretty
have a
much.
really great sound guy
Yeah.
who is really passionate about the project. He's not Christian himself, but he's really passionate about the project. And he wants to come on board, but we don't have the funding to bring him in. Though
Of
he
course.
did say, because he's so passionate, that he would be willing to drop his prices for us.
Yeah.
So that's really great. But
Yeah, it's a one thing as well, and that's another thing I'm going to ask you in terms of hurdles is, have you had the issue of rolling cast members? Because I know when it comes to funding and you're sitting there going, hold tight,
yes,
actors'
yes.
schedules change, people get put on projects.
yes,
I had the same. I was attached to a TV show that never got off the ground for a year,
yeah, yeah,
and they literally just like hold tight, wait.
Yeah.
You know, it will happen. It will eventually happen. And
yeah,
sometimes you go on a situation such as me and David were talking about with John Boyega, where he did an independent film called Attack the Block, and you know that
yeah.
kind of spearheaded his career and put him in great directions.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like myself and many other actors, you end up in a situation where you're holding tight, hoping that the project gets off the ground, but you haven't heard anything, and you have
Yeah.
to move on to the next thing.
Well, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Okay, so in regarding to rolling casting contracts,
Yes.
we've only had two main reasons for someone to move on. Either they are a child and they've grown too old for the role.
Yes.
That was a bit of a sad one. every
That happens a
time.
lot.
Yeah.
And we've had to replace. Or the other one has been just really a negotiation of their contracts, because at the beginning I had a lot more money than I have today. And at the beginning I had high hopes and promises, which weren't going to come about in the end. And I've had to go and sometimes negotiate percentage agreements and things like that.
Of course.
You know?
So you've basically learned how to do the film hustle, so to speak, and negotiate contracts. It's a fun little element of this. Like you could ask Marcus when it comes to the technical aspect. It's the reason why we have agents.
Right.
Yes.
Just to like roll back a little bit, because we've been talking about the technical aspects and everything else. What exactly is the film about?
Oh, that's a very good question, because of course people may not have heard the February show.
Exactly.
Okay, so first of all, the title is GovTech, and it's an acronym that stands for Genetics on Digital Technology. It also brings in the point of it being the God of the world is the technology, which is why it's called GovTech. Now, the film itself has changed story slightly since I was last on the show. But I'm going to try and explain it best, because we've got a new script that we've just been working on.
Is that just yourselves?
Basically, Susanna and I are script writers.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've been very.
But I think the core story is still there.
The
Like
core
it's always
story is
been
still
a dystopian, futuristic story.
No, carry on.
Okay. Where this family find themselves at odds because it's a society where they're forced to take the microchip. It becomes a law, like an obligation in the future.
Of course.
And as Christians, because of certain scriptures in the Bible, they feel like they can't do this, otherwise they'd be turning their back on God. And so they revert to being homeless and living on the streets. But it's gotten to the point now where they're considered terrorists because they're not, following the law.
Yeah, not conforming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a story about what happens to these people, how some of them get sucked into the system, how, and some of them fight against the system. And we don't want to give too much away, but we
want to say though that that this is a fast-paced film.
Yeah.
So it's more kind of a action thriller, so to speak.
I would say
It's becoming that way.
I would say that there are elements of like Blade Runner in it.
Yeah.
And I think the whole 80s thing that you mentioned, that's actually what David was going for. He based it on some of the 80s sci-fi that he likes.
Yeah, being a fellow creative, I can hear the soundtrack in my head, kind of very like 80s pastiche. So
Very John Williams style.
Yes.
And David happens to have a really talented family because his brother, is it Danny? He went to Cambridge, I think.
Yes.
And he's
Music technician.
he's the one that made the music for the film, and I think he's worked with the BBC before and things like that. So he's really blessed to have such talent in his family that they can and are willing to contribute towards the film.
So basically, the film script that you have in place currently and the book are now kind of deviating.
They're so far apart.
Okay, you say they're so far apart.
Yes.
Are they so far apart that Warner Brothers could have done it, or
Oh no. No. Warner Brothers would still have taken out the elements that I wanted to include in the film.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to find that out there.
But saying that, I'm being a bit controversial here, and you don't have to answer this question.
Be controversial.
Did you have a big money offer on the table for this?
I thought it was big, but in retrospect, it was tiny.
Tiny as in, was it like, could it have been enough for
I
you
can
to
give you
actually
the number.
finance? Yeah.
It was 15,000.
But
Yeah, I can see.
To be fair, they wanted to buy the script and make it themselves, so they wanted to take it off our hands. It
So they
wasn't-
wanted the proof of concept.
Yeah, they weren't giving it to us to make the movie.
No, but would they have allowed you to make your own
No,
version of the
they
movie?
said no.
Yeah, I
they
can
wanted
see.
to buy the script. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see why. And like, it was in terms of the money offer, I would say I can understand why you turned it down, because it seems like a lowball offer.
Mm.
Because they would have had the whole proof of concept, and they could turn it into a multi-million-dollar like
Yeah,
franchise or something,
yeah.
and you would have no say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can understand that. I think if you had a nice lawyer, they probably might have given you a bit of a bigger offer there. I can see the reason behind that decision. So they made that offer. You turned it down.
Yeah.
Was there any did they come and
No.
try and coerce you
No.
to?
What happened after that was I got approached by another big name whom I'm not allowed to share.
Of course.
Okay, and they basically came to me and said, we will distribute it internationally in the cinemas if you make the film yourself.
Can you say, are they a Christian-based
No.
film company?
They're not a Christian film company. They
Are
do
they-
a lot of independence.
So they're an established independent distributor.
Yes.
Mhm.
Can I ask why they got you to not say the name? Are you currently
They
still in
told me not to
negotiations?
say the name to anyone.
Okay. So are you currently still in
I'm
negotiations
on-
with them?
I'm under, well, not until I finish the film. When I finish the film, I can then open up the contract again and then discuss things.
Okay. So they're still in contact with you. You
Yes.
guys still have regular conversations with them.
Last conversation was about a year ago.
Okay. So you've got this offer. You're going to have this thing distributed, but you need to make the movie yourself.
Correct. Yeah.
So you've got that kind of hurdle. You've got the concept of the movie out there, and it does seem very, very promising in terms of what you want to go for. Is there any other avenues that you've looked into, maybe like animation or even?
I'm going to say it. We got offered a lot of money if we turned it into a Bollywood.
A Bollywood movie?
Yeah.
As someone who's
Okay. I'm intrigued. I'm also kind of looking at the time. So quickly, what was the idea of Bollywood, and are you going to take them up?
Well, it was a few years ago, and they wanted us to make this into a Bollywood all singing,
Musical.
dancing
Yeah.
number. And we said no, because it would totally take away the point behind the film. But since then, we've been considering doing a Bollywood sci-fi.
Right.
Have you thought about have you brought anyone on board that could help you turn it into that?
Not turn it into that, but also assist you, because you're now
Because
talking
it's a
about
lot-
two separate
Yeah,
projects.
because it's a
right?
lot of you've got apples and oranges. Because as someone
Yeah.
who's I've done some work with Bollywood as well as with the American and UK film industry. If you turn a UK film to an American film, it's kind of
Yeah.
easy. When you go from Bollywood, you're now tweaking the narrative so that you have
Yeah.
these dance numbers and vocals and
Yeah.
stuff in.
So what we've done is, because this is all new, we only thought of this about 3 weeks ago, so it's quite fresh information. We were asked to do a Bollywood trailer for someone as a favour, and then while we were at it, we thought, maybe we can tweak it and make it into a sci-fi and get the funding from these guys who offered yonks ago.
It
So we
has happened
contacted
before,
them,
yeah.
and they said they were still interested.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right. Just to remind you, we are listening to Shoot the Breeze on Resonance 104.4. When we come back after this little break, jingle, we're going to have some film news.
That's what it is.
Right. Okay.
That's got to be one of the longest interviews we've had.
Okay. Right. We're going to do your news.
Yes.
Come back. Right. Now we're back. Michael, tell us your film news.
Okay, we have some delays in terms of Wonder Woman has been pushed back from the original date, which was supposed to be, I believe, November 2019 to April 2020, due to the fact that the original film was released around about April previously, and Warner Bros. Studios were very, very happy about that. In terms of the industry going on as we speak today, I'm looking at a bit more news here, trying to figure out what else we've got.
Okay, well, tell us what happened with yourself. What have you been up to?
This is the funny thing is, with myself, I've signed a lot of NDAs, but I can talk about, I've currently had I've come to the end of my agreement actually with Warner Brothers Studios. I worked on a number of different projects. I've had a featured role in the current MIB spin-off. Can't actually go into full details, as I signed an NDA from that. Did a comic book movie with them recently as well, which was fun. I had to learn a bit of Arabic for that one.
Nice.
And I've also had, if anyone's near a television at some point, I had a television episode of a show that I was on called Ancient Mysteries. I debuted on Channel 5 around about 3 weeks ago. It's currently on 5 on demand. If you want to check that out, I play the Pharaoh Samtic on that one. And it also made its debut over in the United States as a show called Secrets. Very weird. They sold the same footage over to another company. And so now CBS owns the likeness to my face. So you can check out both of those. Also check it out on Amazon Prime. And also I have a movie that was released that I was on the show about previously called A Long Time Gone. You can check that out on Amazon Prime. That was originally shot in 2008, very small budget, and is now being released digitally on demand. You can watch it for free if you have an Amazon Prime account. So make sure that you check that out.
Okay. Just to let everyone know, because we didn't actually cover this bit, today's top 5 recommendation or top 5 movies that we're going to be going through are top 5 films of a religious nature. Now, it's broad, so it covers.
It's very broad.
It covers virtually everything instead of restricted it to Christianity or Muslim or what have you.
Yeah.
Just of a religious
Me and David were having conversations about this.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So we're going to take a short musical interlude, and we're going to be back after this with our top 5. But until then, have a listen to King Herod's song from Jesus Christ Superstar.
Jesus, I am overjoyed.
So yeah, it's great. You know, you guys, it's kind of the reason why I've been trying a little bit to kind of help you guys out in terms of explaining a bit more about what you do and what you kind of need to do. But it's, you know, as I said, it seems very promising. Bollywood side of things, though, wow, that is a huge risk.
We're actually filming the trailer tomorrow.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And
So-
what we're now considering is, because we might be getting funds for this, we might end up doing Bollywood one first, because we might get funds for that.
How much are those?
Excuse me, you're going to be saying all this when just I'm going to
You're going to push it.
I'm going to push you to make sure that you say it.
Okay.
I want to make sure
Yeah.
that that's
Make sure
worries.
Susanna says it. She doesn't have to say what I've been doing.
Oh, no,
nothing
I've
here.
spoken more than you.
Oh no, it's fine. Totally. I'm the same. I'm Mr. Chatty here. He's the one reeling me in right now.
Talk about your
But now, don't forget when it ends.
Yes. It's also because the show's rather short. We've got like
I know.
half an
It's
hour
so
left.
quick, isn't it?
Yeah, that's like,
And at the end, if you wanted to change contact details, maybe we could bring you on board and you could help us with Bollywood if you have experience in that.
yeah. The one thing you need is choreographer. Someone who's choreographer and also someone who specializes in.
We wanted music or Indian dancing, I think it's called Campbell. Yeah, that's what we wanted. Kind of like that,
I never have
I
been a fan of Dead Mouse and Tal. I've seen Shakti and Shakti.
Yeah, one of my favorite movies they did was an adaptation of a American movie called Kalbi Abinanakina. And it's got like Shah Rukh Khan in it. It's basically about an affair, but it's a great movie because they managed to get the serious notes in the movie, but they also have the music numbers in there as well. And usually what they tend to do when they work on those sort of things is they still convey the same story.
Make sure you ask me
They turn it to kind of like
Make sure you ask me what the plot
they turn it to music videos, so that way never is the soundtrack.
yeah, I've seen that, where they did it kind of in a way so they can use it in the music video.
The way they score their music is rather different in comparison to medium, in a sense. But it can be something promising that you can use. As I said, it's
Extra.
yeah. What's the offer? How much do they offer you?
They haven't given us a number yet because at the beginning we said no because we don't want to sci-fi. This is a new idea. It still has a sci-fi element.
There is a large number of Christians over there in India as well. So,
Okay.
yeah.
King of the Jews.
There is.
Right, we're going to be back on in 2 seconds. So that's right. I'm going to put the mics up on my end. And we're back. You're listening to Resonance 104.4 FM. This is Shoot the Breeze. This week, not with Marcus E. Acco or Laura Sampson, but you have David Campbell and
Michael Burhan. Yes.
and this week's guests are
David John Jeffrey.
And Susanna Rodriguez.
Now, while we were away, listening to King Herod's song from Jesus Christ Superstar and getting prepared to come back with the top 5, we got some interesting news. Something that David said. So, David, please repeat.
Which bit?
The bit about the trailer that you're going to.
Oh yes. So tomorrow we're going to be filming a Bollywood sci-fi trailer for a film which we've been wanting to work on for a while now. Mm-hmm. Which is I did look at how many. It's a time travel film, and I had a look at how many Bollywood time travel films there are out there.
Yeah.
And there are 9.
The thing about Bollywood is they have a great way of, I think the word would be appropriating American movies and British movies and making it their own with their own little like dance numbers and stuff like that. So it seems something rather plausible and feasible. So have you guys like got your crew together and your actors and everything for tomorrow?
Well, yes, we've heard back from everybody except for the male actors, who are very shortcoming. All the women have replied and said yes, but the men, they're taking a bit longer to get back to us.
Yeah, I can. I can imagine. Was this all done in short notice? Or
We were given a week.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. What's the plot?
Okay, so basically, it's taken from the film we made back in 2012, Outline, which was it's based on that, where I over the last 10 years have been 8 years, have been writing a feature film version of that film Outline. Right. And then when this came along, we felt that this actually fitted perfectly in with a concept of Bollywood as well. Funnily enough, we could actually work around it. And as I've written the script myself, I can tweak it how I want.
Okay, so you've done Outline.
Yes, so
okay.
What it is...
Where can people see Outline?
Oh, Outline is on YouTube. You can see it under youtube.com/Invisible Sword Productions.
Right, okay. Well, I mean, these links will be on the Shoot the Breeze Facebook page later on, so you can actually catch these up as well. So
the
please
plot.
carry on. Yeah.
Sorry, I did waffle a bit. Right, so...
Well, maybe you want Susanna to tell us.
Do you want to tell the plot?
Yeah, I don't mind. So it's basically, we changed it a little bit, but the original plot of Outlines is that we had something called the Time Police Force or something like that.
Time Force Police Officers.
Or something like that, right? So, who were, I don't remember, sorry about that, guys.
Don't worry.
Who are basically these people that are in charge of catching terrorists through time and space.
Okay.
Okay, so that's pretty cool because what happens, and I think David was influenced by some of the, again, sci-fi films he watched in the 80s.
Like Time Cop.
Like Time Cop, yeah. but a better version.
Very ambitious. So basically, this guy, he's kind of having second doubts about what he's doing because he's beginning to question whether what he's doing is right or not.
Yes.
And then he actually falls in love with someone in the past, and that compromises his position and his job. So what happens in this Bollywood trailer, we thought we'd adopt that story a little bit. This guy is basically sent back in time. He has targets that he has to kill. So he's a hitman, if you will.
Yeah.
And there's kind of a condition of if he goes back and kills this last target, he'll finally be able to be a free man and see his family again, etc. But the target that he has to kill is a girl, and he ends up actually falling in love with her.
Oh, I see.
So it's a little bit cliche, but we're writing it so that it's
not make it too
interesting.
cliche because it's still Bollywood.
Yeah.
And
No,
Bollywood's
we
not
just
cliche.
we just wanted to bring in the romantic as well as the sci-fi elements into the film.
Well, there's some Bollywood films that are very cliche. Off the top of my head, I can probably name about 20. So you've got this idea. You planned this all within a week. Is this like a reputable Bollywood company, like a company that
Yes.
specializes in this?
Yes, they've got named actors and everything that they've worked with on a regular basis.
Okay.
And in fact, when we first was approached, they asked us if they could bring in those named actors into the film.
That would actually make a lot more sense because you've got star power that goes around it and it can help
Yeah.
with funding and stuff. So you have this proof of concept. They're saying to you, we will give you an unspecified amount if you basically make this for us. Do they want this all shot here, or are they looking at, are you guys going to be going abroad to shoot this?
We haven't spoken to them, but we would love to go to India.
Well, I think, they want to see what we come up with first, and if they like the promo and they like the story, then we'll go into more talks. But we would like it to be like half India, half Western world.
Okay.
So in that
We'd like that time space jump,
So
from one place to another.
Okay, well, now it's time for top 5.
Yes, this is a segment called the Top 5. It's where we look at our top 5 favorite movies, depending on whatever topic we're looking at today. Today, we are looking at religious movies.
In actual fact, let's just say top 5 film or movies about religion. So yeah,
Film or movies about religion.
because it could be a TV program or what have you that you've chosen. It doesn't make
Well, mine's all movies because
Oh, well, sorry.
Mine's all movies.
I don't want to exclude anyone.
Susanna's all movies.
Just in case anyone out there has sent us in top 5 movies from TV, you're not excluded. We'll read them out as well.
Of course.
Yeah, we'll have a look at them as well.
So, David, do you want to go through the rules of this?
Okay. Well, we'll start with yourself, David. You'll give us top 5 and 4, and then we'll go on to Susanna, myself, and then you.
As in 5 being the lowest.
Yeah, 5. Yeah, work our way up.
Yeah, I'll be last, of course,
Yes,
because I'm the host.
Yes, you'll be last. Yes. So, David, top 5.
Okay, I've really struggled with it.
5 and 4.
Okay, so I've decided after much conspect. Right, 5 would be Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
That's such a good movie. I love the melting face.
Oh gosh.
Wait, that was original song. But yes, tell us a bit more about that. What's the?
Okay, so obviously the religion is their demonic practicing religion of ripping out people's hearts and offering them to the gods.
As you do. I call that casual Wednesdays.
Eating monkeys' brains, that kind of thing.
You know, it's an acquired taste. So you've got that on there. Name us your number 4.
Number 4 is Revelation with Jeff Fahey.
Ooh, tell us a bit more about that one.
Okay, so that's a very similar concept to GovTech.
Yes.
I suppose that's why I like it, where it's all about Christians being treated as terrorists, and about a cop who is supposed to arrest the Christians, but he finds out the government are planting the bombs.
Oh, wow.
So it's a really interesting one, but it's got a little bit of spiritual, people walking through walls and things like that.
I've tried that a couple of times. It didn't work out for me. Yeah, usually end up with a concussion.
So that one's called
It's called Revelation. It's 2001, and there are 2 films of Revelation that came out that year. So it's the one with Jeff Fahey.
Jeff Fahey.
I know that name. I'm just trying to.
He's been in a few things.
Yeah, it's
Wasn't
probably one of
he
those.
Lost or something?
He was the pilot in Lost.
Yes. I can now picture him.
Mm.
It's kind of like there's certain actors you always face. You remember a name, but you can't place the face. It's someone like Rufus Sewell, for instance. What about you, Susanna?
Okay, so my number 5 is actually quite famous. It's The Prince of Egypt, 1998.
Oh, that's on my list as well. You got me on that one.
I actually really like it. I think it's one of DreamWorks' best films. Sorry. And my number 4 is Fireproof, which is a 2008 film. Suddenly I can't talk. Struggling to talk. And Fireproof is a bit of a romantic one. It's about, this couple who are Christians, but they're struggling in their faith. So the guy, he's becoming addicted to things, you know, he shouldn't become addicted to, and that's pushing the wife away, and she begins to fall in love with another guy.
Sounds like me with Pepsi. Like, the addiction broke my family apart.
Which one? Pepsi Max? Pepsi?
Oh, Pepsi Max. You always have to live life to the max.
No.
And basically at the end, the father takes him aside and explains to him, you know, maybe try this method. It's like a book called Fireproof or something like that, which gives him some guidelines of what to do. And he just starts praying to God more and you know, deepening that spiritual relationship. And eventually he realizes that he was pushing his wife away, and it all ends well, and they come back together. You know, it's a happy ending. It's a nice romantic film.
Yeah, of course. It sounds very intriguing as well. So now to you, David.
Okay. All right then.
He doesn't seem too happy about that.
Well, I've had loads of slightly looks about bits and pieces just to find out what's going on. But one of the ones that popped into my head straight away with this was Godspell. It's one of those movies I saw when I was younger, and there was 3 songs in there that always stayed with me. There's Prepare Ye the Way of the Lord, Day by Day, which is the most famous of the lot. But the one is a hymn, All Good Things, and it's sung all the time. And the version you hear in the church is not the version you hear on Godspell. The version you hear in the church, I really do not like. But when you hear it from Godspell, it's being rearranged and it sounds so great. It's unbelievable. So yeah, number 5 is Godspell, and basically it's the retelling of Jesus. It's a musical based on the Gospel of according to Saint Matthew, and but it's set in modern times, and it's set in around about roughly at the end of the hippie era, but it's all about that. So yeah, Godspell. If you ever get a chance to see it, I saw the movie. It's been redone in the theaters several times. The last time I think was 2012. If you look on the cut, it was 2012, I think. The cut that I make it.
Yes,
it was on there. That was the last time it was done. So that's my number 5. Number 4 is The 10 Commandments. It's a film starring, it's a film done by Cecil B. DeMille and starred Charlton Heston, Yul Brynner, Edward G. Robinson. It's one of those great big epics of the Technicolor era, and you just sit there and you're just swept along in the motion and everything else, emotions of everything.
That's a funny thing. Charlton Heston was using like nearly all biblical movies in that time.
Yeah. I wouldn't cast him in a single one now, but it was one of those things, and you know, sort of like the breaking of the tablet, the parting of the Red Sea. It was just one of those epics that you needed to watch, and it's always, that one's always stuck in my mind. So so that's my 5. Godspell. Number 4 is 10 Commandments.
My number 5 is a movie that was released quite recently. It was actually in 2014. It was on a $2 million budget, so I thought about this as basically it has like quite a lot in common with what you guys are producing at the moment. It's called God's Not Dead. It stars Kevin Sorbo. And you brought Christian movies back to the mainstream. It's one of the reasons why I put it. It didn't get very good reviews because they were trying to kind of Dead Poet Society in a sense. Narrative could have been pushed a little bit more. I felt it was a little too simplistic, but it did spawn a trilogy of movies, including God's Not Dead 2 and God Is Not Dead. Something like, I'm trying to figure out what the third movie was. But this was kind of the breaking ground, so to speak, that got that to that direction. Another movie, which is my number 4, is The Passion of the Christ. Again, Mel Gibson helmed film. Cannot remember the actor's name on the life of me because he's got some long-winded name. But a lot of it came to light through the fact that the scenes were very, very gory, and its depiction of the way that Jesus kind of like, or the way he was tortured and died. All of that was depicted rather prominently, I think would be the word. And again, that gave a huge renaissance in its own right. It made millions in the box office as well at the same time, and kind of put Mel Gibson on the map as a very prominent director, despite the fact he had directed other stuff, but it was stuff that he directed and starred in at the same time. Again, really polarizing. I would not, if you've got a weak stomach and you cringe at everything, don't watch it. But if you like a bit of a gore fest, it's great, and it has a very nice little narrative to it as well at the same time.
It was Jim Caviezel.
Yeah.
Try to say that 3 times fast.
No, I'm not very good. Again, it's like, oh gosh, I was like, wow.
Yeah, he's done nothing else ever since. It's kind of weird. Like, he made his bread and butter from that movie, and then has just dropped off the
He
face of
didn't
the
need to do
map.
anything else.
Pretty much. Apparently, there is a rumor going around they're doing another one. So let's go again to yourself, David. Number 3
And 2.
and 2.
Okay, so I've got too many here, and I'm bouncing between them. So number 3 to me would be the Omega Code 2 Megiddo, which is
Sounds like a
Christian
rap
film.
album.
Yeah, you wouldn't know it. It's not. These aren't popular films. They're just really fun to watch.
So what's this one
So
about?
what happened is, in the Omega Code, it was all about the Bible code and how you can read the Bible in the Torah in 4D and different angles and things like that.
Mhm.
And you would have thought when they go to number 2, it would either be a sequel to that film, or no, it was absolutely nothing to do with that film at all.
Did it take the Hollywood trend of just putting a name on
No,
it and just
what
like
they did
steering
was
away?
they took the Omega Code 1, rewrote it, and basically all the Christians questioned the Omega Code 1 and its biblical standpoint. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff that came out in the news.
So it was a movie
about-
within a movie.
Yes, basically there's a lot of stuff that came out in the news about the Omega Code not really being biblical, and all those questions were answered in the Omega Code 2 when they rewrote the film again.
So it's basically the first movie but retooled.
Yes,
Okay, that's
and that I found fascinating to watch.
So don't watch Omega Code, just watch Omega Code 2.
You actually have to watch Omega Code, because what they did in the Omega Code 2, they missed out all the bits the Omega Code 1 covered. You have to watch them both.
my brain is starting to hurt.
Yes, okay.
So that's my number 3.
That's your number 3.
That's always fun to talk about. So my number 2 is Left Behind 2. And when I say Left Behind, I don't mean Nicolas Cage. I mean the film that was the precursor to that, which was a Christian number called Left Behind, similar concept.
Or was the Cage movie kind of a reboot?
Well, no, what they did with the Cage movie, they took basically the first 15 minutes of Left Behind and made it into a film.
Sounds like Hollywood.
Yeah.
Which one is
So the rest of the film, after the plane lands, nobody knows what happens. That's all covered in Left Behind. And Left Behind 2, I really liked, because they actually used some really nice special effects. You have to watch it. That's what I'm saying. It's called Tribulation Force.
Oh, I'll check that out.
Tribulation Force. That's like.
Tribulation Force. So, yourself, Susanna, give us your number 3 and number 2.
Okay, so my number 3 is Ben-Hur, the 2016 version.
You're reading my mind. Literally reading my mind.
And it's really interesting because this movie actually got a lot of bad reviews. So I watched it because I thought it was going to be really bad. But I thought it was really good. And I really loved the film. I loved the performances. I loved the story. I loved the dynamics of the relationship between the two stepbrothers.
Yeah.
And obviously being a Christian, the end was very touching
And
for
Heston.
me.
Gotta love Heston.
Sorry?
Charlton Heston.
No, this is
Oh.
the remake.
The remake.
The remake, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's why I said it's the
So you're not on the same
2016
line.
version.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh.
not quite on the same
See,
level.
I was listening to you and I was like, oh yeah, 2016. So yeah.
Yeah.
So what else about this 2016 version did you like? Because
I have watched the original one with Charlton Heston, and I did like it, but I haven't watched it in a long time, so I don't remember it.
Yeah, the original one, like,
Yeah.
if you've watched the original one, I would tell people not to watch the reboot, the
And
remake.
see, I really love the remake. I really went in thinking, oh, it's just one of those bad movies that you watch for fun.
Mhm.
But I really liked it. I thought the performances were great by the two main guys. I forget the names now. I think it's Toby Kebbell, and I forget the name of the other actor now, and I do apologize. But I thought they were so great, and there was this beautiful dynamic between them as stepbrothers, because obviously they grow up in the same household. But the guy who plays Ben-Hur is obviously a Hebrew, a Jew, I believe.
Yeah.
And the guy who is played by Toby Kebbell is a Roman. So they worship different gods. They have two different ways of doing things. So the Roman guy goes off and joins the Roman army, and the Jewish guy eventually.
Jack Hudson.
Yes, that's the one. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Eventually, he starts following Jesus, and there's a really touching scene at the end which, as I was saying, because I'm a Christian, it was very touching for me.
Yeah.
He realizes that, this Jesus guy is trying to make an impact on the world, and he breaks down crying, and it's just so believable and so touching, and the emotions are so real that it just really impacted upon me.
So
and
it touched you on a visceral level.
yeah, it really did. And I think, sorry, I'm stuttering a lot. I don't know why. I apologize.
It's okay. I
I
stutter
think-
all the time.
I think it's because I'm getting excited. Sometimes that happens when I get excited about something I'm passionate about. I think the reason why it got bad reviews was probably because of that, because the ending is a little bit cheesy.
But it's
to be
also
honest.
because the way the studio promoted it, because they promoted it based on the chariot race.
Yeah.
And everything else. They put them.
Yeah,
They went out there with this trailer, and it was like an action movie trailer.
yeah.
And then when people went to see it, they're like, "Well, it's dialogue heavy. What's going on?"
Yeah,
here?"
it is. It is. It is a drama more than
Yeah.
his action. But I really liked all the relationships and all the performances. I thought it was really beautiful.
I will give it a look now. You've sold me on
Oh,
this.
that's
Okay.
fantastic.
I mean,
David.
but I can understand the reason why they promoted
Yeah.
the race, because
Yeah.
everyone who thinks about the original movie thinks about that
But
chariot race.
it was around about the time as well when every time the studio tried to reboot something, fans would automatically backlash on it. So it's kind of one of those things where they try to just they try
Oh.
to
Don't
throw it in
mention
something
it.
else.
Anyway, moving on. Mine is
Susanna, did
two,
you
isn't
do
it?
number 2?
3 and 2.
Sorry, David, I haven't given my number two.
Oh, sorry.
Apologies,
Sorry.
Suzanne.
I got so passionate about Ben Hur
Right, okay, sorry, my
2016.
Sorry,
apologies. No, no, no.
Sorry.
it's my fault here. Go on, Suzanne.
It's all right. So number 3 is Ben Hur from 2016. I'm going to make that clear. And number 2 is one of my favorite movies of all time, Les Miserables from 2012.
Oh, Les Mis.
I
yes.
love that film. And I just want to say really quickly, because I know it's David Stern, the reason why there's a religion aspect is because Javert embodies the law,
Yes.
the law from the Bible, whereas the other one, what's his name, David?
Jean Valjean.
Jean Valjean signifies the grace.
Big fan.
And so there's always this thing about law
I'm a huge
versus
fan
grace,
myself.
which is a very Christian concept. And I really love my favorite scene from the movie, I'll just say this really quickly, is when he goes off and he steals all those things from the church and they bring him back. And the priest is like, no, I give it to him. And it's just so beautiful. And
I loved everything about that movie apart from Russell Crowe singing. I think he should be nowhere. That man should be nowhere near a musical ever.
I'm going to be controversial.
You
Go
liked his
for it.
singing.
I like his singing.
I had a feeling you were
Sorry.
going to say that.
I'm a huge musical theatre buff, and
Hang
I
on,
just sat there.
didn't you
like,
say this?
"Cringe."
This? I'm getting a weird sense of deja vu here. Isn't this something that's said in February show?
You
Probably.
may have done. I think
Yes.
David brought it up.
At the end of the
Yeah.
day,
I remember.
it's very
I remember that.
important to know that he can sing.
He can sing.
He was
He just can't do
sang
musical
the wrong-
theatre.
the wrong
It's not
parts.
it's not the same style. It's true. It's
Yeah.
not sorry, what am I saying? Musical theater
Yeah,
style.
he does kind of like
Yeah.
the groanish kind
Yeah.
of. I would, if I could compare him to anything, it's kind of like the bar type singing. He's really good at that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to translating to musical theatre,
Yeah.
someone just went, Russell Crowe can sing and he's a big name. Go for it.
And I understand what you're saying, but I think it actually suited this character. Fair enough.
I agree to disagree.
No
David.
worries, no worries.
Anyway, my number 3, Jesus Christ Superstar. Yet another
Beautiful.
musical.
Love it.
And it's one of those rock musicals which I don't know if it gave Christianity a good name, because it was quite controversial in
Yes.
its time as well. And the structure again was series of parables from the gospel.
Mhm.
Really good tracks, and you got a clue as to that coming up in the top 5, because I played a King Karen song.
Yes, you
So-
did.
Isn't that Martin Scorsese film?
No.
Am I getting that mixed up? I thought he did something. A movie
You are.
of a
I'm
similar
going to touch
title.
on Scorsese in a bit, but it wasn't that.
No.
But I will touch on it.
Oh, thank you very much.
I'm going to move on to my number 2. Bit of a controversial film, this one, which was Angel Heart. I think I mentioned it last week as well. It was it is got a religious aspect to it. It's a thriller, it's a horror, and everything else with it. And I'm taking that to the very limit of the boundaries of a religious film. But any film that has Robert De Niro starring as Louis Cypher, I mean, come on, there is a clue in the name there. So, Lucifer.
Yes.
So I'm not going to go into the details of the film because I rabbited on about it last week. I do remember doing that last week, and listen to last week's show, basically.
Tune in, guys. Go into
Angel
back
Heart,
catalog.
1987. There was a lot of controversy about one of the stars who was quite young at the time, and she was on. Oh gosh, what was that name of that TV program? Stars Disgrace Actor. But anyway, let's move on.
I think there's a long list of disgraced actors we can go for. So number 3 for me is the Prince of Egypt. Suzanne, very lovely, kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of that animation. It's fantastic. Val Kilmer's great, has an all-star cast on there. So make sure that you guys check that out. And my number 2 is a movie that you were actually thinking about called The Last Temptation of Christ with William Dafoe, directed by Martin Scorsese. And again, William Dafoe is very much one of these actors who's very hit and miss, but that's because he's so kooky and he can play. He's such a great character actor. But in this, he played Jesus really, really well. Like, he embodied the character. He brought out something rather unique in his pain, his torture, and the fact that he was going through like the motions. It's something rather polarizing, very visceral. If you haven't checked it out, I suggest that you do so. Now, let's go to our list of number 1s, shall we?
Just before that, we're just going to remind you that you're listening to Resonance 104.4 FM. This is Shoot the Breeze with not Marcus E. Acker and Laura Sampson, but David Campbell and
Michael Burhan. Oh, and of course, we have our guests as well. So
David John Jeffrey
and Susanna Rodriguez.
And David's going to tell us what his number 1.
My number 1 is The Cross and the Switchblade, 1979, I think.
My gosh, that is a
with Pat Boone.
Oh my gosh, it's a
very emotional film. It's dated now, and when you watch it,
you feel my age.
It's very cheesy nowadays if you watch it. But it's a true story, of course. So that makes it a little bit stronger. And the story of how Nicky Cruz became a Christian.
Oh, beautiful.
And there's books on that and everything.
I haven't heard that one referenced in a long time. There's a famous soundbite from it as well, if I remember that. I would have to incorporate it into some show next time round because there is a really famous soundbite. I just can't remember where it is for the life of me. But yeah, if I'd remembered that, I would have pulled that soundbite out.
So as we go on, Suzanne.
Thank you. My number 1 is the same as David's, The Cross and the Switchblade from 1970. And like David says, it is very, I think the audiences nowadays would think it's cheesy, but I appreciate the lack of cynicism and the heightened emotion. And it is based on a true story. And I think it's a beautiful story.
Beautiful. And David, give us your number 1.
My number 1 is going to be controversial yet again because it's a film that is not in any way, shape or form about Christianity in any way, shape or form. However, it draws a parallel and it just points people in a different direction. And it was controversial at the time it came out. It's Monty Python's Life of Brian.
Yeah.
I do love that film. It's just so funny. And it is not a religious film in any way, shape or form. However, so many people kicked up and down about it, and I'm not going to go into it because we're running swiftly out of time. So,
as I said, always look on the bright side of life.
Yes, exactly.
So, my number 1, of course, is Ben-Hur, but not the 2016 remake, I'm afraid, because I just was like, why? It's the Charlton Heston version. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. He was in every single thing that was biblical at the time. Amazing acting, great cast. To say it's dated, it pretty is dated, but it has its charm as well, being the fact that it's such a beautiful, beautiful movie. Susanna basically hit on the narrative anyway, so you know exactly what it's about. Check that out.